Hey guys, Jack Cypher here, back to you today with more One Piece content. This time we're going to be doing a How Strong is Doflamingo video. Now I think I'm going to do what I've been doing with the Akatsuki members from Naruto and start a series of the 7 warlords and go over just how strong each one is. And I thought, why not do one of the most charismatic warlords of them all, Don Quixote Doflamingo. Now, longtime fans of anime will all know that Doflamingo has one of the best setups out of any villain in fiction. We first get an appearance from him when he accompanies Kuma back really early on in the series, just after the Alabaster arc, where we see a brief showing of his power and a quick look into his twisted personality. A bit after, we see some more cruelty from him as he punishes Bellamy and his crew for them failing. He pops up in Marineford and steals a lot of the attention with his monologuing and just great charisma. Did I mention his great charisma? He has charisma coming out the ass. A reason why so many people love this guy, despite how evil he is just for that charisma, that flamboyantness that he carries himself with. He rocks up on Punk Hazard and takes out Smoker, and then finally, after all this build-up, leads up to the adventure of Dressrosa and his climactic battle with Luffy. What is that, like 15 years of build-up? It could even potentially be a little bit more, and boy did it pay off. And how did it pay off? Well, I'm about to tell you how. And let's start, like always, by deciphering his arsenal of abilities. Doflamingo's main form of power comes from his insanely powerful and incredible versatile devil fruit, known as the Ito Ito no Mi, or the String fruit. This fruit is perfect for someone like Doflamingo. His main use of this ability is a technique called the parasite strings, where he can attach them to someone to control a victim, turning them into a puppet or a marionette, usually using the strings to control a person at their neck, which seems to allow him to control their entire body. He usually loves using this technique to cause allies to fight amongst themselves, getting sick enjoyment from it. He once used it to control an entire country's military force. So he's not just using it on a dozen or a few dozen people. He can affect whole armies with this technique. The strongest person we probably see him use it on is Jozu, which when you think about it is a really insane feat because Jozu has incredible strength. So the fact that he wasn't able to break out of it is impressive. However, they're not unbreakable as shown with Luffy. The next main string ability we see from him is his pentachromatic strings, which he can use to cut down opponents. This is his main offensive ability. He uses this to attack enemies that are too powerful or too fast to catch with his parasite strings. Now these have some crazy AP. With it, he used it to cut off a massive leg of a giant called Oars Jr., who's around 3 times the size of a normal giant. He used the pentachromatic strings to shred Smoker to ribbons, and who in his own right is a very powerful vice admiral. And his most impressive feat with this ability was when he freaking sliced apart half a meteorite like it was nothing. Like fucking hell, that is an unbelievable accomplishment. He also has a move called Bullet String, which, like the name suggests, allows him to fire string bullets out of his fingertips that are capable of piercing through enemies. Another technique that he has is called Fulbright, where he can send down spears of string to impale his enemies. A more supplementary technique that he has is called Black Knight, which is basically the shadow clone technique from Naruto. He can create a duplicate of himself made out of string that he can control, which also apparently can talk. Don't really know how that's possible, but whatever, we'll go with it. Unlike Naruto's shadow clones, this Black Knight technique doesn't pop on impact. It can even still be used after having its head cut off. For the time being, though, Doflamingo has shown only being able to create one. Whether or not he could potentially create more in the future is up to debate. Looking more into his arsenal, we have one of my favourite moves called overheat, where he forms massive clumps of string together and uses it to slice through things from a distance. The massive speed and friction this causes creates the strings to become a light in flame. He can also use it to attack from kilometres away. The speed and strength of this attack is truly underrated. And for more defensive purposes, he has the spiderweb strings, which were used to block massive debris of the royal palace. He also used it to defend against Luffy's Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd techniques, which is insane. In the anime, he was shown to be able to layer this technique, which could make it one of the strongest defensive techniques in the series. Now, of course, that's only if you believe he can do that, if you consider it canon. He has another cool technique called the leg shaving string, where he attaches strings to his foot and kicks it out his leg, completely slicing things apart in a really deadly manner. And his most dangerous attack by far being the birdcage technique, which creates a massive barrier of string around an island. Now this isn't just normal string, it can cut off transponder snail transmissions. Anything that tries to pass through it gets sliced apart. It also seems to be impenetrable. Characters like Zoro, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, even Fujitora, the Meteor Man himself, aren't able to stop its progress. However, it's still not capable of cutting through Sea Prism Stone. Now, I'm going to continue talking about the birdcage technique for a little bit, because I want to talk about some of the creative ways Doflamingo might be able to use this attack. We've seen it with Doflamingo in the center of the birdcage, trapped in with his prey. But what happens if Doflamingo was to say, let's say appear above Luffy and trap him in a small birdcage? Would Luffy be able to get out of that? Of course it wouldn't kill him instantly because he would have to contract, which might take a couple of minutes before slicing Luffy apart. But I don't see why Doflamingo can't use the birdcage in a way like that. Now, I could just be missing something. Maybe the technique is just too slow to be able to be used on powerful characters in the series. Because we do know the strings of the original birdcage are attached underground, so maybe the time it takes to create strings of that length are just too slow to be effective. But then it's like the strings he created for Dressrosa had to be massive because he was covering an entire island. Therefore, you could assume that doing it on a person the size of Luffy wouldn't take terribly long. Like, if he was able to stun Luffy, then attack with the modified birdcage, would he have time to do something like that? Now, these are all just theories, because we haven't actually seen him use the ability in this way, but I think it's a really interesting thing to consider, and I really don't see why he couldn't use it like that. But please do let me know down in the comments section if I am just being a total moron and I'm just missing something obvious here. Now, Doflamingo is one of the few characters in the series that have awakened their devil fruit. This awakening allows him to turn his surroundings into string, and then use that string to attack his opponents. He used this ability to form piercing arrows and spears of string to pierce through Luffy and the other gladiators and warriors stationed in Dressrosa. While his strongest awakening technique is called the 16 Holy Bullets, which could even contend with Luffy's Gear 4th King Kong gun for a short time, his awakening gives him massive increases to his attack range, as well as a boost to the ingenuity that he can use his strings with. Think about it. If he's fighting someone in the street, he can literally turn all the houses that are surrounding someone into these bullets to just pierce them. A very, very deadly technique that doesn't get talked about enough. Now, Doflamingo also possesses all three kinds of Haki. His Conqueror's Haki being strong enough to contend with Luffy, a Luffy that just got done a couple of arcs ago knocking out 50,000 people at once, showing anti-army levels of strength. His Armament Haki is also strong enough to not only resist but clash with Luffy's Armament Haki, Luffy being able to punch out a massive Kraken and defeat an old Chinchou, a man with a $500 million berry bounty. I hope I got the pronunciation of his name right. I think I may have butchered that. Doflamingo also has Observation Haki. We don't see him specifically use it, but we can assume it's at a decent level with how he was able to react and keep up and fight with Luffy. So, now that we've deciphered most of his arsenal, let's go into some of his feats and scaling. While it's on the slower side of things, he does have island level AP with his Birdcage. His durability would also probably cap off just below your island level range of things with how he got taken out by a King Kong punch from Luffy. However, that King Kong punch didn't kill him, it only took him out of commission, so I would class him just below island levels of durability. If you want to say it's a little bit lower than that as well because you want to scale Luffy's King Kong gun just below island level and not at that island level range, then that's entirely acceptable as well. He was also able to survive and continue fighting after taking an attack that seriously damaged his internal organs, showing that he's just a monster when it comes to endurance. But more on his AP. Like we said before, he's cutting up half of meteorites with ease. His overheat ability is cutting through multiple buildings on accident. But that technique, his overheat ability, at bare minimum, should be around city block level, but potentially multi-city block level, and higher. Now, that is totally just my bias talking here, but with the ease that he sliced apart the building, and with his other techniques, I could definitely see his overheat ability doing massive damage if he intended it to. So, and also, before I move on, it has absolutely insane range, giving Doflamingo a good variety of close combat, mid-range, and long-range attacks. Doflamingo can pretty much cut apart anything with his strings, of course other than Sea Prism Stone. And as well as people that actually do have incredibly strong amounts of armament Haki like Luffy. But any type of physical matter, he seems to be able to cut it to pieces. Something to back this up is when he uses the Birdcage on Dressrosa, Fujitora brought down a meteorite and the Birdcage didn't even budge. Now, we can debate all day how powerful Fujitora's meteors are, but the simple truth is we'll never know unless Oda comes out with a calc himself. Either way, I think we can all agree that it's a fucking incredibly powerful attack, and it's just not doing anything to Doflamingo's Birdcage. Neither could all these incredibly strong fighters even push it back. Now, his speed isn't as impressive as his AP, at least in terms of just sheer spectacle, but we all know One Piece speed scaling can get really crazy. Now, I'm only going to go off 2 speed feats for Doflamingo. He does have quite a few of them, but we'll just go off these ones because they're the most impressive. And anything else would just be unnecessarily rambling on my part. So the first one I want to go over is obviously what we brought up just before with him slashing apart a meteorite. Now, yes, that's a great AP feat, but also a really, really great speed feat as well. Now, I honestly thought about going online and looking up how fast this meteor really is, and I did briefly touch on it, but everything is just too inconsistent. We just can't really know the true speed and momentum that this meteorite was picking up. Any calc I give you would just be an arbitrary number. So, like we were saying before, unless Oda specifically tells us, I don't think we'll ever have a straight answer. I feel like everyone here, though, can kind of piece together the type of speed this was for themselves. I mean, it's a fucking meteorite. It was never going to be slow. Now, I'm sorry if that's not as, analytical as you may have wanted it to be, but with a feat like that, it's just, like I said, it's just too inconsistent. I didn't want to highball it too much or lowball it either. I thought it would be safe enough to allow you guys to all run with your own interpretations of it. Another great speed feat is Dofi being able to keep up with Gear 4th Luffy somewhat. Now, if we're going to the extreme version of things, Luffy at the end of pre-time skip should have been a little bit over light speed in his base, and 5 to 10 times the speed of light in his second gear. Now, for more on that, just go watch my last video of Naruto vs Luffy. I go into it in more detail there. But here's where things get more interesting and harder to explain, because Luffy, post-time skip, has grown considerably stronger. But this is where it starts getting hard to scale his speed, because it's hard to quantify just how much stronger he is compared to his pre-time skip counterpart. Pre-time skip, he couldn't do absolutely anything against the Admirals. Yet in Dressrosa, after the fight with Doflamingo, he's tussling with Fujitora. So it's hard to scale him. And another reason why he's also hard to scale is because pre-time skip, he wasn't fighting any of the Yonko commanders, which are pretty much his main enemies kind of going forward from here. And the Warlord strength has been retconned a little bit to be stronger. So it just leaves me being able to just say that Luffy is just a shit ton stronger from pre-time skip, and that he's significantly faster. And there you go. Wasn't that an elegant and sophisticated way of putting it? Now, in my mind, Doflamingo should be sitting just below characters like Katakuri in terms of strength. Dofi is definitely Yonko commander level, but I don't think he's contending with the right-hand men of the Yonko, so I would class him just below high Yonko commander level. I reckon he's stronger than Jozu, and if Ace was still with us, I reckon he would be stronger than him as well. Now, Cracker is a very interesting one. I actually reckon Cracker is very, very underrated, and I think in the future I'll do a versus battle between Cracker and Dofi. So for right now, I'll just say that they're relative and leave it at that. We don't know enough about Smoothie or the Blackbeard commanders, so I won't compare them, and I'll hold off on Kaido's crew just to avoid any spoilers. I think it's pretty clear why I'm thinking along these lines. One, because in Marineford we see Doflamingo controlling Jozu as he sits upon him to attack Crocodile. Two, his nerve to attack Fujitora, a freaking admiral. And three, has actually to do with the Warlord's bounties. Now, I'll try to say this without getting too spoilery about it, but basically in the future of One Piece, Warlords get their bounties back and they have new amounts, and they're ridiculously high. Now, of course, we all know that bounties don't just correlate to strength, but they are a big factor, especially when you consider the numbers that these Warlords have. That isn't just all from being a famous pirate or a criminal mastermind. A lot of it has to do with their strength. And considering that Doflamingo should be scaling above some of the warlords we see in the future, then you would imagine his bounty would be even higher than theirs. And when you compare their bounties to the Yonko commanders, you could kind of see where I'm coming from. And to be fair, if you scaled everything just off of bounties, you could potentially say that the warlords are above Yonko commander level. Which, to be fair, narratively speaking, I do understand. I mean, it's always been the emperors, admirals, and the warlords that have kept up the balance in the One Piece world. So it kind of makes sense why the warlords would be stronger than the commanders. And it does kind of seem like that's what Oda's trying to do by rewriting their strength a little bit, which makes sense. That's not a slight against Oda or anything like that. He did introduce some of these guys really early on, and given the strength that we're kind of dealing with in One Piece right now, I can see why he seems to have made them a little bit stronger. Do you guys kind of get what I mean? Do you agree that Oda seems to be trying to retcon their strength a little bit? But just for this video, we'll say he's scaling around just below high Yonko commander level, because the bounty argument definitely isn't foolproof. I should also say here that Doflamingo should be scaling above Gear 4th Luffy in Dressrosa. Just for anyone who jumps at me about him being relative to Cracker, and Cracker just destroying Luffy in the beginning of their fight at Whole Cake Island. One, Luffy had a lot of help from Nami in that fight, and if the Dressrosa fight was just a one-on-one battle, then after Luffy dished out all of his attacks on Doflamingo, which Dofi was able to survive, then Doflamingo would have been able to kill Luffy and get the W 100%. Luffy is definitely stronger than Doflamingo, but with Doflamingo's crazy endurance, he would be winning nearly every one-on-one fight with that Dressrosa Luffy. But that pretty much concludes everything I wanted to talk about Doflamingo. He's an incredibly powerful and cool villain that has a great power that's just so deadly and he can wield with so much ingenuity. It was really great seeing Doflamingo's flamboyantness and charisma on display. He really is one of the best villains of all time, and I can't wait to see him re-emerge in the series. But if you guys have liked this video and want me to continue doing more How Powerful videos, then make sure to leave a like and a comment below with what you thought of this video. If you've made it this far, guys, don't forget to subscribe to be able to watch more anime content. But for right now, I've been Jack Cypher. Cypher out.